An update on the flooding situation in KwaZulu-Natal. Bring in the Provincial MEC for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Reverend Thulasizwe Buthelezi. Good to have you on the program this evening, MEC. Let's start with the extent of displacement. How many people tonight are in need of shelter as a result of these rains?
Well, good evening, Tembegile, and to the viewers. Unfortunately, in KwaZulu-Natal, we have been devastated by the floods in the district of uMkhanyakude, particularly in the municipalities of Jozini, uMhlabeyalingana, and Mtobatoba, where as we speak today, 538 homes have been completely destroyed, livestock has been displaced, the crops such as maize have been destroyed, and really the floods have had a devastating effect over the last 3 days, and the assessment is ongoing. But the major damage is to the roads infrastructure, which is connecting the towns and connecting the villages to the main economic arterial. But also the general home infrastructure, homes really have been destroyed, and even clinics which have been totally submerged in water.
So if 538 homes have been completely destroyed, am I right, Reverend, in saying on average, that's at least more than 1,000 people who would now need a place to stay, right? Where are they all being accommodated?
Well, we would like to really appreciate the efforts led by the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Premier Thamsanqa Ntuli, because since Saturday, all the provincial departments have been coordinated, from Department of Transport to Cogta to Human Settlement to Health, so that those families who are displaced can gain the temporary residential units. But more importantly, our social partners in the form of Red Cross have been hands-on in providing the much-needed disaster material so that those families who are displaced, sitting with the neighbors and in the community halls, can at least get 3 meals a day and have warm clothing in this inclement weather.
And we've now got predictions, forecasts of more rain expected in northern KwaZulu-Natal. In what ways are the municipalities or the provincial government, in fact, preparing for that eventuality?
Well, firstly, we must thank the Minister of Cogta, Mr. Zwelinye, who on Saturday really arranged and facilitated an emergency meeting to deal with the disaster, whereby even as KwaZulu-Natal, we were able to table our report. And more importantly now, going forward, we have issued the early warning system, because it's that early warning system precisely which ensured that no lives were lost, where together with Amakosi and councillors, we were able to warn people to move out of harm's way. And even though buildings have been destroyed, but fortunately, no lives have been lost.
And MEC, just indulge us for a moment. The issue of the early warning systems has been brought into question several times over the last 2 weeks when you look at what's happening in Mpumalanga, Limpopo, etc. In KZN, when we talk about an early warning system, what exactly does it look like? And what does that mean in terms of preparing or even warning people to get to higher ground, shore up their homes, etc.? What does it look like in practical terms when that is activated?
Well, firstly, we use social media communication channels to issue the weather warning from the South African Weather Service. We also use the weekly traditional council meetings where Izinduna are there to ensure that they communicate the message promptly to the affected areas. But the major problem which we now face is that many of our people have built their homes on the floodplains, and those are the ones which are the immediate victims when these floods happen. So therefore, going forward, we do need to come up with a plan where we will be able to settle people in areas which are safe, and able to use our indigenous knowledge systems to ensure that climate change is communicated as a reality now in our daily lives.
But does enough land exist, MEC, for that sort of resettlement that you're talking about? Because in Gauteng, for example, one of the recurring problems whenever we've got extreme levels of rainfall is that people who live in areas like along the Yekske River, right? They are moved because their shacks become flooded, but they come back because ultimately, even though it's a risky area, they're able, for example, when they're there, to walk into the nearby suburbs to seek jobs and other economic opportunities, etc. So that is something that you'd have to factor in as far as where you put people, where you take them. Do you have sufficient land that speaks to those needs?
I think it's a challenge now which all of us as leaders must confront practically. Because if we consolidate the land under Abakosi, the land under municipalities, and even the land under private sector, there would be enough land to settle our people. Just as we speak now in Umlazi, under Inkosi Cele, Inkosi has availed land for families that were displaced. But we need municipalities also to come on board and avail the land, and also the private sector, which owns hectares and hectares of land, to make land available for our people to ensure that they build their homes in safe places.
But has KZN become any better, MEC, in its ability to respond to floods? In fact, to prepare for such an incident and indeed respond, when you consider that about 5 years ago, we saw hundreds of people killed during one of the worst periods of such a natural disaster in the province?
Well, what the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal has done is to establish the Premier's Climate Change Council. And that involves all stakeholders, from Amakosi to professionals to academics, who come together to explore solutions on how we can better prepare ourselves to be resilient towards these disasters. Since 2022, KwaZulu-Natal has been battered by these disasters, but in terms of our response, we have learned our lessons, and we are now in a better position to respond much more quickly and in an effective manner that saves lives to the various disasters that happen.
And a quick final one, I'm not sure if we've got time to squeeze in one more. On the displacement, just very quickly, MEC, what do we do to ensure that people aren't kept in these shelters indefinitely? Because once again, when you consider the situation around 2021, 2022, last year, at the beginning of 2025, we were still speaking to people who were in temporary shelters, saying that the government of KZN had not done good on the promise to resettle them permanently.
Well, the government of KwaZulu-Natal has achieved great strides in resettling the people who have been affected by floods. As we speak, houses are now being completed in Konobia, in eThekwini, which will settle the families that were affected. As we speak, houses are being built in Nongoma. Therefore, with the limited funds available, the government of KwaZulu-Natal has gone an extra mile in facilitating and coordinating partners to respond better. We do call, therefore, on the private sector to come on board and enhance our efforts to respond to these disasters in an effective manner.
KZN Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, MEC, Reverend Thulasizwe Buthelezi, good to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much for your time.